CEO of General Motors says tariffs will cost the company up to $5 billion this year. Those estimates were shared in a letter to shareholders today.
All right, let's just dive right in. Because honestly, this is one of those stories that's got everyone talking, whether you're into cars or not. So picture this. You're driving down the highway, maybe sipping on your morning coffee, and you hear on the radio that General Motors, yeah, GM, the company that's been making cars in America for over a century, just hit the brakes and shut down their U.S. production. And the reason? They're pointing the finger straight at the tariffs President Trump slapped on imported car parts and materials. Now I know, tariffs isn't exactly the kind of word that gets people excited. It sounds like something you'd hear in an economics class you barely stayed awake in. But trust me, what's happening here is way more real and way more personal than it sounds. We're talking about jobs, communities, and the price of the cars sitting in your driveway, or the ones you wish you could afford. Before we really get rolling, if you're into stories that break down what's actually going on behind the headlines, without all the jargon, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I promise we keep it real here, and I'd love to have you along for the ride. So back to GM. This isn't just another company having a tough quarter. We're talking about one of the biggest names in American manufacturing. The company that gave us the Chevy Silverado, the Corvette, the Suburban. Icons, right? And now suddenly they're saying, sorry, we can't keep making cars in America. It's just too expensive. Let's break down how we got here because it's a wild ride. Earlier this year, the Trump administration decided to slap a 25% tariff on all imported vehicles and car parts. That means if you're GM and you need steel, aluminum, or those fancy computer chips that run everything from your backup camera to your heated seats, suddenly you're paying a whole lot more. For them, we're not talking a few bucks here and there. For GM, it added up to an extra $4 or $5 billion a year. That's billion, with a B. Now, you might be thinking, well, why don't they just buy American parts? And yeah, that sounds good in theory. But the truth is, cars these days are like giant rolling jigsaw puzzles. The pieces come from all over the world. Some of the best batteries for electric cars made in Asia, the chips that control your dashboard, maybe from Germany or Taiwan. Even the steel and aluminum, they might be mined here but processed somewhere else. So when the cost of all those parts goes through the roof, GM's left with a choice: jack up the price of their cars, or eat the cost and watch their profits disappear. And here's where things start to snowball. Because as soon as GM raises prices, people stop buying. I mean, who wants to pay 5 or 10 grand more for the same car they could have bought last year? Especially when everyone's already feeling the pinch from inflation, student loans, rent, you name it. So demand drops, cars start piling up on dealership lots, and GM's electric vehicle push, which, let's be honest, was already kind of struggling, just stalls out completely. Those shiny new EVs are sitting unsold because they're even more expensive to make and to buy. Now GM tried to play ball. They looked for ways to cut costs, maybe build more parts here at home, renegotiate contracts, all that. But the math just didn't work out. They couldn't make up for billions in extra costs overnight. So, they made the call: shut down U.S. production, at least for now. And that's not just a headline. That's real people losing their jobs. Folks in Detroit, in Ohio, in Texas. We're talking about 200 jobs lost in Detroit alone, 500 in Ontario, Canada, and that's just the first wave. Because when a factory shuts down, it's not just the people on the assembly line who get hurt. It's the guy who runs the diner across the street, the local parts supplier, the trucking company that hauls finished cars to dealerships. It's a domino effect, and the pieces are falling fast. Wall Street noticed too. GM stock took a nosedive and it dragged Ford and Stellantis down with it. Investors are spooked, because if GM can't make it work, who can? And what does that mean for the rest of the American auto industry? So how did the White House react? Well, President Trump doubled down. He said, basically, hey, these tariffs are about leveling the playing field. For too long, American companies have gotten a raw deal while other countries took advantage. And look, there's some truth to that. Trade hasn't always been fair, But the thing is, when you throw up walls, sometimes you end up hurting the people you're trying to help. Trump's team has been in damage control mode, but so far there's no sign they're planning to back off the tariffs. Instead, they're talking about maybe offering some incentives down the road, but nothing concrete. Meanwhile, GM's CEO, Mary Barra, is in a tough spot. She's tried to walk a fine line, publicly supporting the idea of fair trade, but also making it clear that these tariffs are crushing the company. Let's take a step back for a second. Think about what GM means to America. For generations, this company has been a symbol of what's possible when you combine hard work, innovation, and a little bit of that classic American stubbornness. The cars they've built are woven into our stories, road trips, first dates, tailgate parties, you name it. So when GM says we can't do this anymore, it's not just about business, it's about identity. And the ripple effects are everywhere. Local economies are getting hammered. In towns where the factory is the biggest employer, you're seeing restaurants, bars, even local charities struggling. People are worried about their mortgages, their kids' college funds, their health insurance. It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet, it's real lives. Now you might be wondering, is this just a GM thing or is it bigger than that? And the answer is, it's way bigger. Ford and Stellantis are already warning that they could be next if something doesn't change. Suppliers are freaking out because if the big automakers aren't buying, neither is anyone else. And the tech companies that make all those fancy car gadgets, they're watching their biggest customers dry up. So what happens next? Honestly, it's hard to say. The White House is standing firm on the tariffs, at least for now. They're betting that in the long run, this will force more companies to build and buy American. But that kind of shift doesn't happen overnight. In the meantime, people are hurting, and the industry is in chaos. Let's talk about the politics for a minute, because this is going to be a huge issue in the next election. Trump's whole pitch has been about bringing jobs back, making America strong, putting our workers first. But when you've got headlines about GM shutting down and thousands of people out of work, that's a tough sell. The administration is scrambling to spin this as a necessary sacrifice for a better future, but a lot of folks aren't buying it. And then there's the question of whether these tariffs are actually going to work. History's kind of mixed on that. Sometimes tariffs can give local industries a boost, but more often, they end up raising prices for everyone and sparking trade wars that make things even messier. Remember when we had that whole thing with China a few years back? Prices went up, farmers got squeezed, and in the end, not much changed. But here's the thing. This isn't just about economics or politics. It's about what kind of country we want to be. Do we want to build things here, even if it costs more? Or do we want to keep prices down, even if it means relying on other countries? There's no easy answer, and anyone who tells you otherwise probably isn't being straight with you. For now, GM's shutdown is a wake-up call. It's a reminder that the choices we make at the top, whether it's in the White House, in corporate boardrooms, or at the ballot box, have real consequences for regular people. And as much as we like to talk about American resilience, there's only so much folks can take before they start looking for answers. So, what should we be watching for? Well, keep an eye on whether the administration blinks and rolls back the tariffs, or if they double down and try to ride out the storm. Watch what happens with other automakers if Ford or Stellantis start making similar moves. You'll know this is turning into a full-blown crisis. And listen to what the workers are saying. They're the ones living this every day, and their voices matter. If you're someone who cares about where your stuff comes from, or you've got family who works in manufacturing, this is your story too. It's not just about cars, it's about the future of work in America, and whether we can find a way to compete without leaving people behind. And hey, if you made it this far, thanks for sticking with me. These are the kinds of conversations we need to be having, not just shouting at each other on social media, but actually trying to understand what's going on and what it means for all of us. So if you want more stories like this, real talk, no spin, make sure you subscribe. I'm here to break it down, answer your questions, and hopefully Make sense of a world that sometimes feels like it's spinning out of control. At the end of the day, the GM shutdown isn't just a business story, it's a human story. It's about people trying to make a living, companies trying to survive, and leaders trying to make the right call, even when there's no perfect answer. Whether you're a gearhead, a policy wonk, or just someone trying to keep up with the news, this is one of those moments that's going to shape the way we think about America for years to come. So, next time you see a Chevy on the road, or you pass by an empty factory lot, remember, there's a lot more going on under the hood than most people realize. And if you've got thoughts, questions, or just want to vent, drop a comment. Let's keep the conversation going, because this is our story too. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.